Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report in Washington, where a federal appeals court has rejected Donald Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution in the 2020 election interference case against him. The panel of 3 judges unanimously turned back the presidential immunity argument. In their decision, they said Trump no longer has protections he may have had as president. Trump is expected to appeal to the Supreme Court, which could either decline to take the case or, if they do, could delay the case by months as they consider it. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford reports.
The ruling by the influential D.C.-based federal appeals court was a stern rebuke of the former president's sweeping claims about immunity from prosecution, with the court saying the former president must face trial for efforts to subvert the 2020 election. For the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become Citizen Trump, with all the defenses of any other criminal defendant. In court and on the campaign trail, Donald Trump repeatedly says he can't be prosecuted for his actions as president.
A president has to be given immunity, and this has nothing to do with me.
But the 3-judge panel of 2 Democratic appointees and 1 Republican was unanimous and emphatic. Any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. The bounds of Trump's immunity arguments became clear last month. While he sat in the front row of a packed courtroom, one of the judges presented his lawyer with a dramatic hypothetical.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first.
Since the Senate declined to convict Trump, that argument would mean special counsel Jack Smith couldn't either, and the appeals court flatly rejected it.
But this is not the final word. I mean, Trump can always ask the full appeals court to reconsider that decision, or he can skip that step and go right to the Supreme Court. But having lost at every turn, that is a long shot. I do not see how he's going to get 5 votes from the Supreme Court, which means even if the court decides to hear this case, a trial could start later this spring or sometime this summer. John?
Jan Crawford, thank you. For more analysis, let's bring in CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa. Bob, let's step back just a tiny bit. Remind us again on what grounds Donald Trump believed he had immunity in this instance.
John, great to be with you. Former President Trump has been claiming for months that because he is a former president of the United States, that gives him blanket immunity from any sort of prosecution. Now, this is not something that's detailed in the U.S. Constitution, as you know, and as a historian yourself, you know that this is a complicated issue of presidential immunity going back to Richard Nixon and Watergate, and he wanted to test his theory in the courts, and he did, and it got pushed back against him tonight.
And so in the elections, in this campaign so far, when he loses in the courts, he wins in the campaign trail, to use a kind of rough metric. Is this playing out in the early hours along those same lines? And is his remaining challenger, as distant as she may be, Nikki Haley, responding to this at all?
She isn't being very forceful tonight in terms of talking about chaos around Trump. That's been a recurrent theme in her campaign. But it is going to be something to watch, her margins in various states, not just South Carolina, her home state later this month, but those Super Tuesday contests in early March. If she can get somewhere close to what she got in New Hampshire, somewhere in the 40 to 45, maybe even close to 50% range in some of these states on Super Tuesday, and she says she's staying in through Super Tuesday, then you could start to have some concerns across the Republican Party. There is an alarm sounding about Trump and his legal challenges, but so many of the voters across the country share Trump's grievances about all of his legal challenges, and they see not just this case, but the many cases that are out there as some sort of barrage against him that's unfair, and he's using that to his political advantage.
How do you think, but we don't know the timing, as Jan mentioned in the tag of her piece, this could, the timing here is flexible depending on what the Supreme Court decides and if the president decides to actually go to the Supreme Court. But how do you think this affects, as a timing matter, the general election and Trump's campaigning in the months to come?
The timing is extremely sensitive politically and legally. Jack Smith, the special counsel, wanted to start this trial in March and wrap it up as quickly as possible. Judge Chutkan was signaling she wanted a speedy trial. Should it begin in March? And now with it TBD in terms of when it starts, if it ever starts, the January 6th case. You have the possibility of a case dragging into the summer, maybe even the fall of a politically charged campaign election year. And that could create an uneasy dynamic for the Justice Department, which often likes to avoid major prosecutions, especially of political figures during that period.
Just imagining, Bob, thinking about the fall, usually debate time, who knows if we'll have debates, but debate time and court time in the same time period. It'll be extraordinary. Robert Costa in Washington. Thanks a lot, Bob.